Welcome to Business Velocity. Today we are talking to Drake Jens. Drake is the owner and CEO of FinTeam Business Consulting, a fractional CFO firm that helps small businesses financially flourish by simplifying complex financial decisions. Drake has experience in M&A, leveraged finance, investment management, and valuation. And fun fact, he has officiated 2 weddings. We had so much fun with Drake. I'm not gonna lie, we cover a lot of ground in this episode, but we mostly focus on mergers and acquisitions, specifically the when and the why behind the decision to get into M&A. We also talk about how to strategically make some of those big financial decisions in your company, and we kind of branch off from there. So please enjoy this episode of Business Velocity. How is your day? I have not talked to you, it feels like, in a long time. Was it yesterday?
It was yesterday, yeah, I believe so for the for the team meeting. But lots of things happen in a day in this world. So yes, today is good. How's your day?
Today's been good, but yes, lots of things. With the summertime, people are out, so teams are experiencing like kind of tighter bandwidths because people are covering for other people, and then that sort of tends to spiral, right? So like then it's like, well, what do we do? Like, how do we make sure all the work gets done? But it's also really important to plan ahead for that kind of thing so that your business doesn't feel like it's constantly like teeter-tottering on the edge of a cliff if like people take time away. So I feel like a lot of my conversations today were actually really about that. But it's good. And it's kind of a part of pressure testing the system.
Yeah, I feel like there's a little bit of buzz back in the air. Sometimes the summer months are a little scattered. People are out, initiatives, they do the mid-year check-in, and then it's a little bit like, all right, we'll talk to you again in a month after we spend some family time, etc. But the buzz of school is showing up, and it's starting to, you can feel the energy starting to turn into, and we need to hit all of our targets and our goals, and how are we going to end the year strong, and let's go. Uh,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which is a fun little roller coaster ride we get to do yearly
Yeah.
yearly with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, yesterday I had a conversation with a company about how their operations connect to their finances. And I'm just realizing, like, oh, wish I had recorded this maybe the day before just for kind of a refresher, because today we're going to talk about, yeah, finances and sort of the ups and downs of all of that. So I don't know. As you were saying that, I was like, oh, this is kind of perfect timing just to help me remember, just the tie between the two. I think
Yeah.
finances is such a complicated, kind of emotional topic for a lot of people. But I'm excited to talk about it today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who we're talking to today? Because you know them pretty well.
Yeah, so we're talking to a friend of mine, Drake Jens. Drake, I've gotten to know over the last maybe 2 years. Very smart, very driven, doing a lot of great work with clients, making an impact really fast, kind of growing and scaling his own business. Drake has a lot of energy. One of the things I really enjoy is we can nerd out about all things finances and all things like how do you do it from basic accounting conversations to high level strategic, and he's kind of got all of it in the bag. And I think maybe one of the things we should note, as we think about like our framework in the 5 facets, finances is one of the huge elements. And the reason it is it absolutely needs to be a focus of your business. It absolutely is a great indicator of the health,
Yeah.
right? It is often how healthy are we? Well, let's look at the numbers, right? Like let's look at the finances. And so Drake is masterful at diving into the books and looking at everything that's going on and figuring out like how healthy are you? Think about it as a doctor looking at a potential disease, right? And figuring out like, okay, what's going on, diagnosing, figuring it out and be like, it's this, and here's how we're going to deal with it. So I'm excited to bring him in today. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of clear, practical things that folks can get out of it, and hopefully some quick wins. And worst case scenario, he's got a great assessment you can take and learn things.
Nice. Very cool. Well, yeah, let's bring them in.
All right, let's do it. Here's Drake Gents.
Team, what's going on? It's great to
Hey,
see
Drake.
you.
Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. I know you've been on a summer-long adventure. You've spent months. Give me your maybe top 2 or 3 favorite spots on this kind of 4-month adventure you've been on.
Absolutely. Well, first thing, where the family is, that's my favorite place to be, right? But in terms of
Uh,
locations, to
you
answer your
got
question
points.
specific,
You
like
got points with your
softball,
mom. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and dad. It was cool. They're the best. I
All right.
love
All
them.
right.
Shout out mom and dad. But Glacier National Park, Zion National
Yes.
Park, insane, breathtaking. I would go to the tops of the mountains and I would be like, this is insane. Just this is insane. I just sit there and I'd never experienced anything like it. So it was amazing. But Dave, Hannah, thank you for having me on the podcast today. Excited to be with you. Excited to realize some synergy and excited to dive in.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna be fun. So Dave and Drake have known each other for a while because Drake is a member of one of our masterminds. So you guys have gotten to grow in your relationship, but I've heard about Drake as we prepare for this podcast. I did not know that you have been traveling all over the country though, and I'm super jealous. And I'm gonna need the not top two version of that story. I'm gonna need to know like all of the spots to go after the podcast, but
Okay.
that's super cool that you've been able to balance, yeah, that like, yeah, work adventure, especially, during the summertime. We all need that time away. And yeah, growing this business for yourself. I did do some internet stalking today to prepare for this conversation. So I did look up Finn Team and the consulting firm that you started, but I'd love to hear about how did that start? How did you kick off Finn Team and kind of what do you guys focus on today?
So travel recommendations. I'm going to be totally honest. If you want to know where to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to ask my mom. She's going to make like a little email and then I'm going to send that to you. Right.
Perfect. Perfect.
That's what it is. She's fantastic at it, but I'll do the best I can. She'll do better. I just know that. And it actually took a lot of work to make that happen. It took months of preparation. And even while I was doing it, it was very difficult because as many business owners know, it's your business, right? And it takes much to delegate and trust others to help you service clients and do that which you said you were going to do for clients. So that was a very humbling and amazing learning experience for me as someone leading a company. But as it pertains to FinTeam, did not start it, bought it. So I started in Charlotte as a leveraged finance analyst, had a great job with a good team, ended up losing that job. And after a couple months, I was like, well, that was weird. That doesn't make any sense to me. And when I look in hindsight, it's like, it's so clear now because 6 months afterwards, I ended up buying FinTeam from a former boss of mine, which is fitting because we're going to talk about acquisitions today and mergers.
Right.
But I bought it from an old boss of mine, who I had interned for during college. And ever since I worked for him, I said, I'd love to buy a business. I'd love to do this at some point in time. Did I think I was going to be buying a business when I was 23? No. That was insane. And I look back and I say, wow, like I've learned amazing things, and it has been a very, very like deep joy of mine to do work I love with people I love doing it with for clients I love doing it for, and working for a company where the mission and vision is so aligned with me. You can't buy that, right? You have to
Yeah.
create that, and it's amazing because we've been able to create that, and I've loved it. So that's the
That's awesome.
story.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that you had acquired it. So yeah, so that kind of sets us up perfectly. One of the things that we want to talk about with you today is yeah, M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So tell us, how do you guys typically approach this conversation? Because it is, I mean, there's so much to talk about when it comes to M&A, but maybe what's your ethos around it?
Absolutely. So there are two sides we'll talk about. There's the maximum return on investment side, and there's also the, I mean, it's life, the life side, the real, like when the pavement or when the tire hits the road and things get real, what do you actually want to do? So there's these two sides, and you of course understand that I have bought a business. I have observed and helped others transact or attempt to transact in businesses and business acquisitions. So it is a very attractive space for a variety of reasons, but it is also a very intense space for even more reasons. So right off the bat, the why behind why we're doing M&A is critical to understand, in my opinion. But that's a high level overview into some specifics I'll share, and I'll share my screen at this point in time as I think that's appropriate. Pretty little PowerPoint we got going on here. Cool. M&A what? Like, what are we talking about here? What is this? It's mergers and acquisitions it's honestly, it's thrown around a lot. It is a very attractive in industry, especially now with many people pursuing entrepreneurship through acquisition and other forms of M&A activity. But for most people, mergers are not extremely applicable just because you take two entities, combine them into one, and a result of the larger entities results in synergy, which I joked around about that. But the two greater are better than the one, because you can have cost sharing, one accounting group, one marketing group, one sales team, etc. And the operations, you have more people that are very influential and can just share knowledge, right? It's an example. Acquisitions is, hey, me, Drake, the person, I'm going to go buy FinTeam, the entity. I buy that directly. FinTeam may go buy other firms and consolidate it and roll it up, and I can do all these different things, but that is acquisitions. We're going to focus specifically on the acquisitions portion of it because it is so popular. But right off the bat, we have a decision tree, right? So we talked about what is M&A. You just buy stuff, right? With this goal of either merging or with acquiring it, adding it to your existing business, or going and starting something new, which is FinTeam, which I bought it and I didn't have another business to merge it with, or I didn't have anything to add it on to. So right off the bat, the when and why, which I think is helpful. How do we think about M&A? And we're going to go even conceptually theoretical and perhaps even higher than a 10,000 foot view to say, right at the very beginning, we observe that people need a thing or a service, right? That's capitalism. That's how the economy works, right? We all are reliant on one another through a massive and very complex supply chain. And at some point, someone will need a thing or service from you, right? Dave, you run your mastermind because I needed wisdom and counsel as I was growing my business. That is a service that's very important. And if you observe someone with that need, or that's the thing they need, you have, in my opinion, several common options. You can outsource it. You can farm it out, which is common, right? Some people do this with us. We have partners. And they'll say, hey, I have this client. They need help with books. They need help with financial strategy. The partner we have doesn't want to complete that work, so they can refer it out to us. Financially speaking, there's a referral payment associated with that, and it has the lowest upside, but also it has the lowest work and risk because you've identified the need. You've connected them with someone who can perform with excellence, and you've achieved a reasonable outcome for that client. The next is to build. This is frequently the most painful thing about this is going from 0 to 1. You create the entire infrastructure, the whole groundwork, everything. It's very time consuming, very stressful. It has the highest upside, but the highest work and risk associated with that. And even within this, typically you have to pay others to help you build something. And then you have, of course, the acquire or the buy, which is, hey, there's an existing thing that works. I've observed this need in the marketplace. There's a thing or business is already doing that thing. They're doing it well. And when I buy that, it has an existing team, an existing infrastructure. It has all these things going. So I can acquire it. I have a large upside, although perhaps not as large as the build in some situations, but the work is moderate. The risk is moderate. I know that people want the thing because this is a business and because it has a significant amount of revenue. Fill in the blank. So that is the decision tree. And we say right off the bat, if you observe a need or something going on where people need a service or thing, you have a variety of different ways to not only help those clients with that need to add value, but there's several ways to monetize that opportunity and to leverage your skills and abilities in order to help them and generate a return based off of that. So when somebody talks to us, I'm thinking about M&A, I say, why? Is time a large constraint? Are resources a big constraint? Why are you perhaps considering it? And I say that specifically because some people will look to buy a business for a year or two, and they'll raise a fund, and they will basically fund themselves searching. And they're called searchers, and they'll fund themselves for 1 to 2 years. And I've asked myself this question, which is if they look for so long and they spend this money searching for business with the money they could have done to build the business, is that perhaps more economical? That is the case in some situations, not all of them. But that is just perhaps a contrary view that's not very prevalent in industry that I've had. So hopefully helpful. Thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns?
All right, Professor. How do you guide a decision maker through this, right? Like you've got the outsource, build, buy. You mentioned at the outset, there's kind of two sides to this. There's like the technical, functional, economic, financial side of this. And then there's the like, yeah, but what do you want for your personal life side of it? Right. So like, how do you coach someone through, or how do you support someone through making sense of not only the numbers and the options, but also the clarity of what they want in their lives? And how do you kind of marry those two things?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. And that is not just an M&A question. That is a business financial management question, which is, what do you want? Like, what are your goals and objectives? And that will change based on situation with your significant other, if you have kids, and there's a whole we have another slide. I'm happy to pull it up if you like, but it's a margin of safety slide. And I asked the question, what are your risk objectives, or what is your risk tolerance in a business? For example, Dave, if you come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a business. People need marketing services, right? They need marketing services. They need people to do pay-per-click. Like that needs to happen. I want to do it. I would say, great. Okay. So you have a house, married, kids, you have another business going on. So that tells me right off the bat, you probably want to spend time with your family. You probably want to spend time with this existing business. We can just observe some of perhaps your objectives with the acquisition, saying you're trying to fulfill a need, but right off the bat, you don't have a ton of time to build something. So if you observe that need, you can right off the bat see what your objectives are, see what your priorities are, see where you want to invest your time, talents, and treasure. And you can kind of go between these different options. And right there, unless you want to take the mastermind groups and kind of table them, which you do great at them, I would encourage you against that. You can outsource it, maybe buy, but building takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of intensity, and it takes a lot of focus that you wouldn't be able to spend on your family, with your friends, or on your existing businesses. So that's an example, but I mean, each person has to decide for themselves what's important to them. And once you decide what is important, which is the critical piece and the critical component to all of this, then you build around that, right? And you build around what's important to you. And these are different outcomes that will be driven by what is important to you at the end of the day. So finish your question.
Yeah, I like this approach a lot because I think I resonate with it a lot. So I help a lot of our clients pick their project management system, or pick their new process, whatever they're going to redesign their process to be, so that it works better and it's scalable and things like that. And oftentimes people are like, oh, well, I saw this demo for this, I'm not going to call out a software, but for this software, seems like it'll like check all the boxes. Let's just do that one. And I'm like, well, but did you actually look at it in context of like what your team is capable of? Or, if your team isn't super tech savvy and you want to use something as complicated as like a HubSpot or a ClickUp, it might not be the right choice for you. If they are tech savvy, but then also a lot of them don't actually have their computers in front of you and they all work on iPads, like that also is a consideration. So I like pulling this back and reminding people that there's a whole kind of organism and network behind these decisions, not just the end goal, I think is really very critical. And I definitely feel like a lot of our listeners can resonate with it too, because I do think that like most of our listeners and most people that we work with and are connected to are small businesses who are trying to make these decisions. And we do get shiny object syndrome. We do see some cool demo of some, software or something. And we're like, oh, well, I'll just jump to that lily pad. But what about the distance from here to there and all of that requires and involves? It's just a good way to approach it.
So you'll like this next tangent. This is not something that I don't think many people talk about. I'm also team ClickUp, by the way. The AI functionality is amazing. I love it. And I taught myself it. It's amazing. Anyway, okay, so that's another tangent. When you think about this, you can think about as a leader, as someone looking to fulfill this service or product or need, you can think about your key skills and abilities and giftings, right? What are you gifted at? And if you observe right off the bat, Hannah, that you can do well with implementing project management systems, with basically taking a organism, which it is, there's way more than a spreadsheet, and you can take that. And if a company has an existing thing going on, you can identify efficiencies. Well, right there off the bat, you can perhaps buy, right? But if you have a skill set, and again, if you have a certain skill set of sales or of building or creating something new, you can build. And it's fascinating because when I was going through the process of looking at additional companies to buy, I observed similar things, which is, hey, many of these firms, their infrastructure is very poor. The processes are very poor. Many are broken processes, which caps out their productivity. So I asked myself, we're doing a really good job of selling. Like we're adding clients very quickly. Why would I add more clients when one of the hardest things to do is to build the infrastructure and the processes? If we figure out the processes, or like we should build and we should keep going that route. But if somebody has already figured out the process and you can acquire it, amazing. So as you talk about project management systems, when I bought FinTeam, one of the reasons I did it, contracts are in place, websites in place, domain, email, like the legal structure, most of it's already set up. So that's work and time saved. I don't have to spend thousands of dollars on lawyers. That is a massive value. So maybe an interesting way to think about it. And if you buy, chances are people ask the same questions you did on which project management system to use. And you can buy that knowledge because their decisions likely will reflect that knowledge. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're sharing there in many ways, because a lot of folks think of M&A as, hey, we're buying a book of business, we're getting, financially this might make sense because we're going to, increase our revenue by X number, or this is an opportunity for us to sell our company to get to X number. And if you're on the purchase side, one of the significant factors guiding that decision should be, how easy is it for us to integrate this business into how do we already operate? We talk a lot about the integration problem in clients that we work with. Either they're buying a company or they might be getting acquired. And if they're interested in getting acquired, we will ask them, how easy is it for somebody to absorb you? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the process failures? Where are the clunky things? Where are the, underperforming employees? Like, we need to take care of that now to make you more attractive for a potential acquirer. And or if you're purchasing somebody, there's a whole list of questions we would ask from an integration perspective to say, hey, watch out for this, watch out for this, watch out for this. Where's we're essentially identifying the other areas of risk beyond financial. So I'm glad that you're mentioning that in many ways, because it is kind of a stew, right? Like, there's lots of different factors. The numbers can make sense, but the culture doesn't, or the processes don't, or the integration doesn't. And then where do you want to sit with that deal?
Agreed. It's honestly, it's all a question of what risk do you want to have and what core strengths do you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a core strength of selling, you can just outsource. Cool. If you don't want to handle and those problems sound overwhelming and you don't want to fix a broken culture and you don't want to fix broken systems and processes, you should build it. But if you're okay with taking that which is broken and restoring it effectively, like, buying makes sense. And this is all operational. Like, we can talk financial outcomes. Your points are precisely correct. It's largely operational. And most of the headaches are operational until you run out of money. And then the money becomes your number one problem very quickly. And there are a lot of financial components, but totally agreed.
Well, it's interesting too, because right before you came in, we were talking about, like, one of our 5 facets is finances, and we were talking about it. It's really a good, like, health indicator for the business, right? Like, it's essentially the is your business cash flow positive? Like, are you cash flowing well? What's your profitability? All those types of things. Those are all indicators of how healthy you are. How sustainable is this business now and into the future? I'd be curious. I know you have the Drake check, right, which is this kind of financial assessment. I'd be really curious, and I'm assuming you do, tens, if not hundreds of those a year. As you're looking at all sorts of businesses, what do you see as kind of common, maybe health pitfalls that businesses get into? Even, they could be thinking about M&A, they could be thinking about different things, but even just, the regular functioning business, kind of what are some of the common, all right, man, here's the thing that I see across all of these organizations?
Absolutely. I'm going to reshare my screen. I'll just share it now so I don't forget. The Drake check was started because I would just have friends come up to me and be like, oh, like, can you just look at my finances? Like, I run a business. I don't know what I'm doing with my investments. Can you look? So it is an endearing name, but that is the heart of what we're doing, which is, we're at the end of the day, we want to add value honestly, in an industry or business service that is typically not viewed extremely well. It's hard to earn people's trust, and we fight to earn their trust because it is very hard to earn trust and it goes very quickly. So before anybody works with us, we want to make sure that we are able to provide value and we're able to provide an excellent service. And they shouldn't work with us at the end of the day. That's what we believe. And that's why we do that whole Drake check process. We find a lot of really interesting things. And I share this because, hey, like, this is effectively how we view financial strategy, or really, like, having good finances. This applies to M&A, but applies to most businesses, right? At the end of the day, it all starts with your financial data. It's in QuickBooks, it's in Xero, wherever it is. All of this starts with your financial data. If your financial data is incorrect, the rest of this is going to be unhelpful. And I've observed this many times. So if you're working with somebody who says, hey, our financial data is not correct, but I made adjustments afterwards, I typically view that with a grain of salt because I understand the different errors associated with the financial data. Specifically, one time we were working with someone and we pull a balance sheet, we do our analysis, we have our ratios, we have our forecasts, and their cash balance on their balance sheet is twice or double what the bank actually reported. And we said, what?
Yeah, that's
So,
okay. Yeah.
so right there, budget's off, cash flow forecast makes no sense, strategy makes no sense because these build off of each other. So right off the bat, the financial data is critical to get correct in our opinions. This is you have to have this right. You should have this right before you bring on a strategic consultant. And if you're thinking about acquiring a business and you don't have financial data correct, I would encourage you to pause, get your financial data correct, understand your situation. Because the thing is, if you don't have correct financial data, you aren't able to create budgets. If you don't have budgets, you don't have accountability in your business. You don't have an understanding of what you're spending money on. You don't understand where you're overspending money on, in my opinion. And again, you take that and you say, here are the parameters by which we can spend money. These will drive cash flow going forward. We use and we encourage people to use budgets as a barometer for forecasting cash flow. Because again, if you have accountability and good expectations of what people can spend in your organization, you will then understand the types of money or the amount of money they will spend. There are, of course, revenue, there's COGS, there's software, there's payroll, there's expenses people with other cards pay, there's debt, there's all these things. All of these should be consolidated with clear expectations into a cash flow forecast. And once you say, here's how much money we're going to have at any point in time, that's the magic that will help you get a well-informed strategy that is informed by your financial picture. And at the end of the day, people talk about the one main number. I would strongly encourage people to use this cash flow forecasting, at least from a financial perspective, as that one number. And I'm almost done with my pontification here. But this is the last thing. This is the one number, right? This is the one number. Somebody says, Drake, should we hire somebody? Boom. Here's a cash flow forecast. You give me everything we have. We have all of our capital structure. We have all of our distributions, debt payments, payroll, OPEX, etc. And we have this one number and we say, hey, if you hire them in March, I don't love that. You can see the cash balance is not amazing, right? But you hire them later the year based on the cash reserves we're going to accrue. We will have an ample margin of safety to hire them. If you really want to risk on your business, cool, hire them. Hire them now. You'll probably have to pull from a line of credit or make something else work, but it doesn't make sense. And similarly, you can do this with, you'll see debt ratios and things like that. But if you're thinking about acquiring a company and you aren't able to do this or see this, I would have a ton of anxiety. I would have an incredible amount of anxiety if I did not have this to make decisions. So hopefully helpful context. We see that very frequently. And again, going back to your main question, it all comes back to the foundational data we're working off of. This data is almost always wrong. Somewhere it's wrong. And there's a lot of different things we can talk through. If y'all want to take this and have a look on why it's important to have accurate books and what good books look like, these are just simple things, but payroll is typically messed up. COGS versus OPEX is typically messed up. The balance sheet is almost always messed up with payroll liabilities, sales tax payable liabilities. There's a lot more things, but honestly, if you do the one-on-one things right, which is, hey, like categorize transactions weekly, do monthly reconciliations, and have monthly reviews of your books, you'll probably be okay. And you'll get like 80% of what you need done. So yeah, hopefully helpful.
Can you repeat that last point though? Because I feel like again, speaking from someone who like doesn't have a background in finance, it's a lot of terms that I feel like can often get like really overwhelming and be like, okay, wait, I have to do what again? So I think just hit on those last few points just again of like if you just focus on these few things, then you will at least have the numbers to tell you what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do three things, you'll be okay, right? And this is not saying you have to be a genius. Bookkeeping and getting the financial data right is a matter more of diligence and correct structure than it is having a complex knowledge of accounting. If you are weekly reviewing your books to make sure that the money in and the money out makes sense and you understand what that is, great. If you then go in and then make sure that your bank accounts match what your books say is in your bank, that's the next thing. And after that, go in and review your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your cash flow and make sure it makes sense. One of the very frequent things is, hey, our credit card balance is negative $20,000 on our balance sheet. Does that make sense? Does it make sense that the bank owes you money or that your credit card provider owes you money? No, but that is rather a result of not doing the second step, which is doing these monthly reconciliations, which is very common.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to think about as a business owner. And oftentimes I really feel like the biggest benefit that Dave and I give our clients as business development consultants is, hey, you don't have to you don't have to turn all the knobs. You don't have to fix all the problems. You got to find your big sticking points, and you got to like turn those couple cogs, and then everything else will be affected by it. And so I think just that simplification and sometimes that like compartmentalization is what helps us from like spinning out from saying like everything's on fire. No, not everything, but you do have like three big things that are smoking. So we should grab three buckets. And then you will at least see a benefit, even if it's not everything's perfect and buttoned up. Yeah, I do think that it's really important to help people remember that it's not everything is on fire.
I'm gonna raise my hand. I might overwhelm your readers or your listeners here, but I'm gonna share this.
Sure.
This is exactly what you're describing. As you think about, hey, like where does stuff go wrong? Like this is the process of, hey, like this is financial management. This is financial operations. This is not strategy. This is all the stuff that has to get done. So if you're a business owner and you're watching or listening to this and you say, what the heck is this? This is like most of the stuff going on from a financial perspective in your business. And you can see everything links back to the accounting system. But in between all these different softwares, and you have all these things, and you probably have like, you have a payroll software, you have a bookkeeping software, you have a bank account, you have credit card, debit card, you have accounts payable, you have invoice, you have all these things, and typically they're in separate pieces, and you can compartmentalize each of them, and you have to understand several things. One, how do they work together? Two, how are they integrating into one source of truth? And three, how are they actually doing? One of the reasons we do the Drake check is because this is overwhelming. Second is because if we start working with a client, we have no idea. We have no idea what this looks like. And if this is not good, your foundation will be completely messed up. And if you say our team has too much manual work to do, it's likely because something in here is not functioning quite correctly. And there are likely opportunities to improve that process. And you can see like, cool, you have the red, that's not good. Yellow, that's okay. Green that's good. And you can just make improvements from there. You make marginal improvement gains like you were talking about. So hopefully helpful. We built this for another client and I had a ton of fun doing it, but
yeah, no, I think this is really good for anyone who's listening to the episode. So what he screen shared looks like a overwhelming mind map, but also once you break it down, like it does make sense. So if you're listening to the episode, make sure to go find us on YouTube. There's also going to be a link in the show notes with this visual, because I do think that this does break it down into sort of, I would say, 5 distinct rooms and then specific things to think about in those squares and how it all does need to connect to the accounting system. And well, I was just going to say that you said the source of truth. And when it comes to finance or operations, it is so key to have that one source of truth of everything, all of the numbers or all of the data or all of the job codes or cost codes or whatever. So often in small businesses that we work with, I find that as I'm helping someone like with their processes, they're like, oh yeah, well, this is true, sort of. And then it's also sort of over here. And nope, like the one accounting system that unites everything, critical. The one process document that is the source of how you do things at your business, critical. So I like how you like kind of connected all those different, rooms together and said like, yeah, we need this one source of truth. Dave, what were you going to say?
No, it's really good. It's interesting because a lot of the like founders, business builders, tends to be who we frequently work with. They're often wearing finance as a hat on the side, right? Like they've got it twisted a little bit sideways, and their main focus is like strategy, relationship development, sales, or they're the product service delivery, kind of primary person. And oh yeah, I've got a bookkeeper over here that like keeps my books, and maybe the balance sheet lines up and maybe some of that stuff lines up, but they're not necessarily doing the forecasting and financial strategy. We see that all the time. I mean, one of the things we promote often is, hey, are you financially forecasting? What does 9 months look like? And how are you predetermining some of your decisions now of what you can do 6 months from now based on, we call it like red, yellow, green, right? Like what if you're below projections in 6 months? What do you need to do? Do you need to let this team member go? And can you make that decision 6 months ago? So you're not stressed out and anxiety deciding if that you should let that person go. You're doing it from a place of, wisdom, knowledge, foresight. So we think forecasting is absolutely critical. And, if you're a founder, business owner, and you're but it's probably one of the later things you're thinking about because you got so much stuff going on. So roundabout long way to get to the question, which is when does it make sense to offload some of this stuff to a partner? Like, is there a you hit 3 million and you hit this level of complexity, it's probably good to get like a fractional CFO, or at least it's good to get a strategy person in here on the financial side, et cetera. I don't know if you have kind of like a guideline or a way of thinking about, all right, this is kind of where it makes sense to start outsourcing or supporting yourself in this category.
Sure. I will say two things. One, forecasting is not going to excel and having like 5% year over year revenue growth and then matching OPEX and COGS based on that, right? If you have like
Yeah.
revenue and all your expenses growing at 5%, that is incorrect. And I would, as someone who spent an uncomfortable amount of time building these, I would strongly encourage you to go deeper, review bottom up budgets, and through that you get accountability into the accuracy of your books, what you're spending money on, and then also having a deep level of understanding on where you're going to be spending money going forward. So one disclaimer there. Your question, so if I'm a bookkeeper and I'm approaching a client to sell them, if I cannot add many multiples based on what I'm charging them, they should not work with me. As a business owner, you should measure it several ways. One is time saved for you not doing the books or for you getting that 2-hour meeting bi-weekly off your calendar. What is the return on that? Likely will be many multiples of your time, right? So first off, it is time saved. Second of all, it is additional insights gleaned, which is, hey, I learned all these really fascinating things about the business, and now I have additional accountability, additional insight, and additional wisdom and knowledge pertaining to my business. Finally, and this is perhaps the most important, what is your financial peace of mind worth to you? We typically see a similar size, which is people start wanting fractional CFOs around 2 million of revenue. But if someone has a significant amount of anxiety pertaining to future decisions, they should hire sooner. Like can you put a dollar value on peace of mind? Yeah, a lot of times you can.
Yeah.
But typically, in my opinion, if you can find that, it's typically worthwhile in my opinion and based on my experience because the decisions are so much. I'll give you an example. So we were working with an e-commerce company over the last year and a half, and they had an SBA loan. They had excess cash, but they're hyper seasonal. And they said, I don't want to have debt. Can we pay it off? And I said, I want you to. I very much want you. That's one of our key things. We want to reduce people's reliance on financial instruments, including debt. But I cannot recommend that because your margin of safety is not high enough. All you have is this cash, right? Because you need to use it to buy inventory, etc. And then what happened? Tariffs, because they were getting an inventory from overseas. You have lower spend on discretionary goods, which theirs was one. So the revenue was down 60% year over year, not good, not buying, and they were going through their cash reserves like crazy. I'm really glad we didn't pay down that debt. So
Yeah.
if they were to pay it down, they would have to get new debt. And that new debt would come at an interest rate of 10, 20. If you go with a merchant cash advance, 50%. A little bit of a rant, a little bit of an example, but you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for all of this. I kind of think that we could probably do like a 5-parter on like all the various things that we kind of touched on today. But I do want to let our listeners know. So if people do want to get in touch with you or with Fin Team, how can people find you? And let's connect them to Drake Jens and the Fin Team. I did it.
That's
How can
good.
they find you?
I mean, that would be pretty fantastic if they did reach out.
Okay. All right. That's good.
I'll add it to your bloopers, Dave. Feel free to review the website link. They're going to attach the website. In the website, you'll see our services, you'll see our team, and you'll see the Drake check. The Drake check we're going to do for free for all listeners of this podcast. Feel free to let us know. And then if you're interested, I think, Dave, you can send them my email.
Yeah.
You can reach out to Dave. You can reach out on the website. You can reach out to me personally on LinkedIn. Any way you want to reach out is great. But again, I also want to say this last thing. It's super important to my team, to us that, yes, we do business to generate income and to make a living. But at the end of the day, I mean what I said, which is that if we cannot add value, like that is what it is. And we're very acknowledging of that. And we understand that. And I don't want you to feel like, because you don't understand all the finance stuff. You're going to come into a meeting, you're going to be overwhelmed by the details, and then you're going to get it hard sold. Like that is the complete opposite of how we work. And that is a failure on us if we do that, because that is not our intention, right? Our goal is to first understand your business, then perhaps to help you understand your business more. And then it is a soft sell. It is saying you can take this scope and go to any other bookkeeping firm, any other fractional CFO firm, and work with them. And that's very important to us. And sometimes that happens, and that's totally fine. So that's the last disclaimer. Dave, Hannah, thanks for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it. And happy to do a 5-parter if you want. I would love that. But your call. It's cool. Anyway, we can put the fun in finance.
We almost need, that's 2 puns. That's 2 dad jokes, man. That's great.
I see why you guys get along now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like every time we talk, I learn a little something new, and I always have appreciation for how you run your business and how thoughtful you are in, 1, caring for clients, but 2, thinking about kind of how to take care of clients and how you educate folks. As always, good to have you on, man. I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Cool. Appreciate y'all. Have a great day.
Thank you. It so much there to break apart. And I mean, again, for anyone who's listening to the episode, like, go check out the visuals, go look at the YouTube video. And I think that the way he's breaking it apart is so digestible. And I told you this at the beginning of the episode, I constantly do have to learn about finance and how operations can play better with that, other kid on the playground, because they are so directly connected. So I feel like having somebody like that in your corner is just like so vital. Like, you need someone to be able to talk to you. And then, like, as a leader, be able to be like, okay, I have this question. I need this strategy from you. And then I'm going to have to make that decision. And so having someone who can break it down in a way that's digestible is so critical. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of financial speak. And as you get into, the more complex version of your businesses, and as you're growing and as you're scaling, there's just more moving parts, and payroll gets more complicated. Everything gets more complicated. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a place that feels like a lot of founders, a lot of business owners are like, yeah, I got to fix that. But then they don't, in part because it's complex, because there's so much going on, because it's difficult, because if as Drake said, if the foundational data isn't right, it's hard to build a strategy from there. And once you get it right, your ability to make strategic, thoughtful decisions amplifies considerably. One of the things I've always liked about Drake is obviously he's a very sharp guy, understands a lot, but also is good at compartmentalizing it and making it. He is like a professor. He makes it kind of fundamentally understandable. And I think that's a superpower of his. Strongly encourage you to check him out. Fin Team, do the Drake check. It's worth it. It'll just help expose some of the things that you need to be thinking about in your business. And thanks for joining us for this fun-filled episode with Finance and Fin Team. How's that for alliteration?
There you go.
All right.
We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on Business Velocity. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also explore our framework at theevolveddifference.com. And remember, the time is now to take these strategies and apply your learning and achieve velocity. See you next time.